The reason I said podcast is because there was a podcast war between Roddy Piper and Steve Austin, and you told me you had no idea this happened.
No idea.
Okay, just before, right, and you were just saying there seems to be like a level of being uncomfortable between Roddy Piper and Steve Austin in that segment. Was that like kind of palpable to you when you were watching it? Are they even too similar as characters, maybe?
Yes, that might be it. Two similar characters, two rebels, two people that go against the grain, that don't listen to authority. You would classify both of them in that way, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like two are the same, or the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object kind of thing. And what's this going to play out? It kind of had a weird, like I said, uncomfortable feeling. Maybe more so than even the Morton Downey one in a way. Just weird. But maybe two guys busting each other's chops in the ring. Who knows?
I always felt that, and apparently there may have been more to that. If we go another 10 years into the future, from 2005 to 2015, I, at the time, 2015, listened to podcasts fervently. Podcast One at the time had a lot of shows, including the most important one at the time, or the most listened to, was the Steve Austin Show, or Steve Austin Unleashed, or whatever it was. And then there was also Chris Jericho's one. They had some other ones. At one point, Jerry Lawler was on the Podcast One network that lasted a very short amount of time. Right, so here is the bone of contention. Roddy Piper, on his Piper's Pit podcast, it was about a year in at this point, had Will Sasso on. Impressionist, comedian, all that kind of thing. Mad TV, I guess he's most famous for back in the day. But he wasn't promoted as Will Sasso. He was promoted as, we're having Steve Austin on the podcast. And then Will Sasso, through the entirety of the show, did a Steve Austin impression. They even had Jim Duggan call in, and they didn't tell Jim Duggan either, it was a wind-up. And Will Sasso as Austin, starts giving Jim Duggan grief. And they start going back and forth a bit until he's clued in that's actually not Steve. Because I don't believe Jim Duggan was particularly keen on Steve Austin either. At one point, at least, because they had their own weird interaction in WCW. So, Will Sasso as Steve Austin continues with the character, starts saying certain things that upset Steve Austin, allegedly. Some where he was talking about, his career, making fun of Steve Austin's career. So the episode airs, and it's taken down about 6 hours later, according to Roddy Piper. The network took down the episode, and in Piper's words, all of his podcasts, because they were both on Podcast One at the time, or at least suspended from their feed. Now, Piper claimed that Steve Austin took issue with the impersonation and also advertising Steve Austin to be there when it obviously wasn't Steve, and that Steve Austin contacted Podcast One, or the network's leadership, and caused the removal/change. And Piper's exact quote was, after the show aired, the company had not only taken down the podcast, but all of my podcasts, because Steve, you were upset, and you went and talked to them. Now, Piper also claimed he was threatened with firing from the entire network, and also said that he wasn't fired, he ended up leaving, but he felt like he was going to be censored. So therefore, what's the point in being here? I can't have fun. We'll move over to, I think at the time it was Westwood One. So he ends up moving all the podcasts, and it's just that quick. And Austin's perspective, and he barely has ever talked about this apart from just briefly at the time, Austin, via his podcast and public comments, said that while he didn't like the episode, the narrative that he got Piper fired couldn't be further from the truth. Quote, Austin said the episode had some business of a personal nature that I didn't care to have floating around there, being downloaded into cyberspace, so I had it removed from rotation. And he further said that Piper's claim that he got him kicked off the network is inaccurate. So, essentially, here's where it becomes even more controversial. So Piper's kicked off the podcast network. I think he may have done one more show after it on Westwood One or wherever it was. And then, very shortly thereafter, he loses his WWE Legends contract. And then a few weeks later, he dies. So.
Oh, wow.
In that sense, it didn't make Austin look good. I mean, it's probably happenstance. That, it's probably, I don't know if like the stress and cause of effects affected Roddy Piper's health in any way. But after the fact, it was just like, damn, that ended up not being a good look for Steve in the end, even though he was probably right.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it's something super personal and stuff like that, yeah, I can see him doing that. Once again, here's what I say. I said it with Taker and I said it with Triple H before, and this goes for Austin as well. Austin does now, he might have said, hey, please take that down. That's beyond, he crossed the line. It's personal. I don't want that out there. I don't want it being downloaded in cyberspace or any of that. But remember, what do people want to do? They want to make Austin happy. They want to make Taker happy. They want to make Triple H happy. They want to make Vince happy. They don't have to demand anything or ask anything. Now, the episode, like you said, he didn't want that one episode out there. Plus, he was advertised. I said Austin and Piper, almost the same guy in protecting their character, protecting their brand, protecting their business. But Podcast One or somebody in line to have the power to take down the entire podcast, let's just take it off and make Steve happy. Do you see what I mean? Just like the clout thing, that somebody's going to volunteer to do that or do that and say, hey, Steve, we did this for you because he shouldn't have done that. They might not even have said that much of it. Now, the Legends contract, that just falls to speculation and interpretation. It could be a coincidence. I don't think the ultimate passing of Piper had to do with those instances. Like he had said in the interview, he didn't think he was going to live to be 65 because of all the past stuff and his health concerns. Not to mention he went through, being ill, getting surgeries, things like that while he was wrestling, right? He'd come back from a surgery to wrestle in WCW.
Now, of course, Billy Jack Haynes blames Steve Austin, but he also says that Chris Benoit's son was actually Vince McMahon's son. And also he blew his wife's head off with a shotgun.
Oh, there's that. I mean, those are independent, by the way. We're not talking about
yes, of
that
course,
with Piper. Yeah, I don't know about that. What did Steve ever say anything or?
No, apart from after Piper died and sort of paid tribute to his legacy, I guess he's never mentioned Roddy Piper publicly ever, which always struck me a little weird. I'm always wondering if there was some sort of professional animosity between the two.
I'm really not sure, but if he did not pay tribute after he passed away, then you would say there's absolutely a rift between these two guys. But he did that, so I don't know. That's weird. I've never heard of that. I never heard that whole thing. I know Will Sasso imitates Austin. He does a great Justin Ventura. As a matter of fact, he and Killer Cross did one together on a show. Who else did he did the thing with Bret Hart? Will Sasso has been involved in the wrestling business for decades, off and on. He actually, wait a minute, was this before or after? Remember Will Sasso came out as the fake Austin, I think, on SmackDown?
Oh, this is way before that. This was way after that. The whole fake Austin thing was like 2001 or something, or 2002.
Yes, it was. So this was way after.
Steve Austin said about Roddy Piper's passing, "I'm shocked and saddened to hear of Roddy Piper's passing. He was one of a kind and one of the all-time greats." And that was it. So I guess it was a Twitter thing.
No, and for all we know, they squashed it after that they did talk on the phone and squashed it because Steve's not a phone either in a lot of ways. He's not going to give the political answer if he doesn't like somebody to that degree. My guess would be, like you said, he hasn't mentioned them since, but he mentioned them when it counted after he passed away. But if he really didn't like somebody, he would just never, even mentioning their name would be putting them over in a way to most wrestlers.
I'm kind of wondering, did Roddy not kind of see this coming slightly? Because Steve Austin, for Podcast One, at least in the wrestling realm, and probably all like him and Adam Carolla and a few others, they were the golden geese of the podcasting network at that time. They were doing massive numbers. So kind of doing stuff that made him look bad, I can't really see any other way that could have ended, and that Roddy didn't quite foresee it. Or maybe he didn't, just didn't care.
No, it could also be just something in good fun. And then again, let's not forget Will Sasso. There's no script there between him and Piper. They're probably just going off back and forth. And Will Sasso might have said, well, this will be like edgy and funny if I bring this up, if it was brought up, the personal detail. But it sounds like Austin saying what he said, there was that personal nature that was brought up that offended him and he wanted the episode taken down.
We're going to save the rest of the Roddy Piper stuff for a part 2. So, once again, we're going to have the Vince Russo stuff. We're going to have probably WrestleMania 8, Adrian Adonis, Vince McMahon. We're going to save all that for a part 2, so I hope you join us for
Real
that.
sports, if it's not part 2, it'll be part 3. The real sports interviews, stuff like that. That got him fired.
We covered that in a previous show.
We did. It was just
throw
a
up a
clip
drink.
off of that.
We've already done it for once. So to take a drink. I think we've actually already mentioned that, but I mean, it might be worth mentioning it again, I think, definitely. We're going to talk about a bit of news now.